There's a video I posted recently that's kind of doing really well, and I think because I really expose how guys have a rotation.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
How some guys will have a rotation, right? Do girls have a rotation? Do they ever have a rotation?
I think some do.
Okay.
I don't, in my experience or from my friends, it's not to the extent that guys have. So I feel like guys' rotations, they're talking, they might be sleeping with them, they're dating them. Not all, but like from what I've
Usually just sleeping.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like girls, it's more, I'm talking to multiple guys and I'm keeping my options open. I'm dating them, maybe not sleeping with them, and sort of having that as a bit of a roster, if you would say. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So would they ever be sleeping with like 3 or 4 different guys?
I
Have you ever seen that?
Some, yeah. I mean, you see it online. The friendship group that I have, a lot of them are in relationships, but when they've not been, it's not really been something that they've done as much.
Sure.
But then, you know, I see all over TikTok, there's a real push on women just being like, I want to sleep with who I want to sleep with, and like, yeah. So I think it really depends. I think it depends on the girl, like themselves, their friendship group. Like if your friendship group is doing it, I think you're more inclined to then be like, oh, this is normal behavior.
Yeah, of course.
You know, I'm going to do that. But from what I've experienced, it's more like dating, talking sort of thing. So it could be like, oh, I'm going out for a date with this guy on Friday night, but I'm seeing someone else Saturday night. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything's going to happen.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because the first time I learned that some girls will actually be sleeping with multiple guys at the same time, that's just like can be a thing. Guys, we really don't expect that.
No, and they hate it.
We don't expect it. I think just because it's like, well, one, it's there's probably a double standard, but I think for a lot of guys it is a bit of an ick.
Yeah.
I think just because there is a bit of a standard in terms of, you know, how men are sexually and women are sexually in that sense. But I think guys have been raised that girls are this angels who can do no wrong.
Yeah, innocent angels.
She would never do that. She would. What, who?
Yeah, look, what?
Cassandra? Nah, no way. And then, yeah, it's like you find out she had a rotation. I think guys think, okay, she has a rotation for, okay, this is the guy who spends money on her. This is the guy she goes to when she's feeling really upset, like an emotional sponge. This is the guy who she has sex with. So when guys think of rotation, they're like, right, well, let me be the guy she has sex with. I don't care about any of that other shit.
Yeah.
I think a lot of guys think that. Yeah, that's so interesting. What do you think? Do you think that's really down to? Do you think that's down to like the stage in life or phase that she's in, or do you think it's just down to maybe her temperament as a woman?
I think I think that a lot of it comes from your past history of men. So I think if you've kind of always been doing that, you know, you've got onto the dating scene, you've always just had a couple of guys on the go, you're sleeping with them, that's just your norm.
Yeah.
I think if you come into the dating scene later in life after being in a couple of relationships, you've not really done that, the dating scene's scary, like let alone sleeping with like 5 people at one time or whatever. So I think a lot of it depends on sort of your background in regards to relationship and men.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And then also, I mean, you know, if you're, say you're a girl, you've been in a relationship from a very young age with the same guy, you get to like 25, it ends. You know, it's an exciting world out there, I guess. So I think that probably could be somewhere where a woman could step into that. Well, I'm just going to go out and see what I like, figure out what I do and I don't like, because you've only been with one person. So I think a lot of it is also just do with like how you've sort of like how you've gone through your dating history prior. Or if that's something that you've always just done.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. Is that an ick for girls if you like you went on a few dates with a guy and you found out he's sleeping with maybe 2 or 3 different women?
So I would say yes. So I'm a firm believer in like anything you did prior to meeting me, I'm not going to judge you on that. Like that is in the past, you know, there's no judgment there. But from meeting you, if we've gone on a date and then we went on a second date and you're sleeping with other girls, that's a no for me. Okay,
so just hypothetical.
Go on.
Let's say that you've met a guy and, you know, like you really like him, you've been on a first date. And let's say he's, you know, if you ask him, he's transparent. He's like, yeah, there's maybe like 1 or 2 girls that I kind of sleep with, you know, here and there. Right, it's only something casual, it's not anything serious, but it's a thing, right? And he's very open and honest with you. At what point would you expect him to stop sleeping with them?
I don't think I'd like it from after the first date. But sometimes ignorance is bliss. Like, do I need to know that you're like, if you're keeping your options open and that's how you keep them open?
That's a good point.
Do I really need to know? Do you need to know that my options are open? At the point of the conversation where we say, okay, I actually like you and this is something we see progressing. And at that point, then I think then there should be like, you're not dating other people, you're not sleeping with other people, you know. I probably wouldn't... I think if I started sleeping with someone and I found out they were sleeping with other people, that would be something that I would just not be okay with at all. But I think it's about having the conversation. But then it's difficult because when you date someone in the beginning, you don't sit down after that first date and be like, by the way, I'm sleeping with 3 other girls.
Very
that
true.
Would put do you know what I mean? Or I wouldn't sit down and be like, by the way, I went on a date last night and now I'm on this one and this one's a little bit better. It doesn't sound great, does it?
Yeah, I'm so bad. I'd be like, tell me how it went.
Really?
I'm like, tell me how. But I think, I don't know. I think I think we're a bit of a competitive spirit. Maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
A bit of a competitive spirit.
If they sit there and they're like, the last one was better, it's like, whoa.
I'll be like, so what are you doing here?
Yeah, why have you turned up?
What's something you want to bring to conversation? Something you want to talk about today?
I think something that's happening, sort of speaking about how dating's progressing and, you know, we're definitely in a new day and age around dating and everything and relationships. I think something that I've really noticed is that women are going to relationships a lot more independent than maybe they were before, which I think is an absolutely great thing. Like, they've got their careers, they've got where they live. But I think that brings an unsettling dynamic to a relationship, because I think men, as they're just built, are not there to provide, but they want to provide. They're protectors, provided. It's like a primal instinct in them. And I think when you take away not needing to do that monetarily, not needing to do that in the space of like giving you somewhere to live, I think men sometimes struggle to figure out how they can do that providing without needing those things, because other things that you put into it, say if you said, well, providing could be cleaning, it could be cooking.
Very true.
They're sometimes seen as societal things that women would naturally do, and I think it shouldn't, but I think some men find that quite demasculating, and you can see a little bit of a divide in relationships where there's this like power imbalance, and they're, you know, the male's trying to sort of be that provider, but when the woman's independent, they've got everything that they as such need, that I feel like that creates like a bit of an uneven dynamic in a relationship.
I know exactly what you mean. I think there's a few things that are at play here. Before I answer that, I want to ask you a question. Would you rather be with a guy who is like kind of same level that you're at, or would you rather be with a guy who you can look up to, you can learn from, that you go, oh wow, like I really find that admirable about him?
I think maybe the same level.
Okay.
Like, but it wouldn't bother me if it was someone who I looked up to. I'm quite like a career-driven person and have a lot of like aspirations of what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I think maybe it's not about whether they're on the same level or someone I look up to, but if they've got that same drive and they're implementing things to get to where they want to be, I think I'd like someone sort of on the same ground as that. I don't think I could be with someone who was like, you know, I'm in my standard 9 to 5, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this, but just me personally, I'm in my standard 9 to 5. This is what I want to do, and I'm happy with that, because my aspirations are to move away from your standard 9 to 5, so it wouldn't really match up, if that makes sense.
Sure. So it's like, you don't mind if he's here, but he has to be working to get there, where you can be like, oh, this is a guy, he's striving for greatness, at least to where you're at, if not more. Or
maybe more as well, like, as long as they're happy with that being the dynamic. Like, I've in past relationships experienced sort of like a bit of a jealousy at like that I was striving to achieve things and, you know, sometimes failing, sometimes achieving them, and they maybe weren't, and they saw that as like, well, you're doing better than me, and it was just a very weird situation to be in, whereas I'd want someone to be like, it's not that you're doing better, you're just doing you, and I'm doing me, and whatever paths we're on, we're going to complement each other, we're going to support each other, if that makes sense.
I agree, and I think you both definitely should do that. So back to your question about, you know, when coming to the relationship more independent, while I think there are some guys who can be very insecure about that, I think there's something else at play, if I'm being honest, from what I've seen and observed and talked to men and women about. And that, how do I say this? Okay. If you went to a guy and you said, hey, you're going to have a woman who's going to love you, right? She's going to, you know, take care of you in the way that a woman does. You don't have to pay for her. You don't have to like sacrifice anything for her. Every guy would take that. So it's not about him that, oh, I can't provide her a house, I can't pay for her, whatever. A lot of it has to do with, because usually when I ask most women, like, oh, would you rather be with a guy, you know, in your level below or a guy you can look up to, right? Most women say they prefer a guy they can look up to, right? A lot of it manifests if a woman feels ultimately the man that she's with isn't at least where she is or striving for better, she doesn't have that much respect for him within the relationship.
Okay.
And I don't mean respect for him as a human being, like a level to level, but I mean the kind of respect that men need in a relationship. So then what can happen is men try to get that respect through other means by either pulling her down,
Yeah.
right, which is of course wrong, or by becoming abusive, right, to change the power dynamic.
Yeah.
Right, because we think it's about power, but it's actually about respect. Because I
Okay.
think a lot of it comes down, because, you know, if you're with somebody, if you're with a guy and you kind of feel that you're kind of leading the relationship, you're kind of doing better than him, he's kind of following and learning from you, which is lovely. But I'm just going for most of them, not all. But I feel like I want to be with someone who I know can be my husband, who I can trust to make decisions, who I can trust to make decisions for the both of us. How much do you trust him to be able to lead in that way if that's something that you value?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women, it's like, if you're not at least on my level or above, I don't know if I can trust you to do that.
Yeah. So, and that sort of plays out in a lack of respect starts to show in that sense. Yeah.
Yes. And when I say, this is what I'm saying about, when I say respect, it's not about she doesn't respect him as a human being, though sometimes that can happen, but it's about respecting him as the man within the relationship. Because if she can still respect him as the man of the relationship, a lot of guys would be like, that's fine. Like, if you're earning, you're doing you, that's fantastic. Do you know what I mean? But like the example I'll give is like Martin Luther King, right? He actually wasn't earning that much on paper because he was doing this movement. It was actually his wife who was earning the bulk of the money while they were, you know, together and for the household. But she respected him as the man within the relationship.
Okay.
Because obviously he was on this higher mission. It's not about the money, right? It's not about the economic level. So I think that does play a big part. And the thing is, men can feel that.
And what do you think women do to show that respect? Like, what? Because it's not like you said, it's not about not respecting them as a person. When you say respecting him being the man in the relationship,
Yep.
what do you think women do that shows that or doesn't show it? Like, what highlights that in the relationship?
Yeah, no, great question. So one, how she is with him in public around others. So if she like speaks over him, if she like corrects him, that's like
Okay, yeah.
that's disrespect for him, for sure. Of course, if she mentions if she uses the whole thing of you know, her being in a better position than him in an argument or something, it's like, okay, so that's the thing that she thinks about, right? Guys think about, oh, she thinks about this, right? Honestly, the first sign, I always say this, the first sign that a woman stops respecting her man within a relationship is she stops sleeping with him.
Okay.
For sure. It's even like my minor annoyances, just like sometimes it's a look, sometimes like an eye roll or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like when he seems to be like a bit of a pest to her, and she's there because there's comfort in the relationship, and not saying he's not a bad person, but also not saying that he's not a good person, but it's those things. Because thing is, respect is it's one of the biggest ways that men feel loved.
Yeah.
So the moment he starts to feel less respect, he just feels loved. And sometimes guys, wrongfully so, can try and get that respect through toxic means.
Yeah.
Like we talked about.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think it's those little things like you said, like the eye rolls, the sighing and everything like that. Because I think when we talk about, you know, if someone said to you, oh, my partner was really disrespectful, you instantly go to the extremes of like, oh, were they calling you names? Were they swearing at you? But it's not always that.
No, for sure. Have you ever, what's something that you've learned from your experience with like guys or relationships? They're like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to bring into my relationship, or this is what I'm not going to do.
I think something I've learned of recent is to literally that allow a man to be a man. You don't have to be so hyper independent. I think from like relationships when I was like a young adult and stuff, I took from that being hyper independent. I don't need anybody. I can do it all myself. And I think then when going into future relationships, that sort of manifested itself as a I don't need you. And that, I think, like literally what we've just spoken about, affected the power dynamic, maybe the respect levels, and there was that grasp to constantly try to sort of switch it up. And then I found myself, I guess, them being like, oh, but now I want you to do all of those things. But when we first went into it, I don't need you. I can do all of that.
100%.
But now we're 6 months in, I'm like, why are you not doing that? And I think that is something now, even if in my head I'm like, I don't need a boyfriend, but I want one, I would never portray that maybe as I have before.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I completely understand how like at some point you want him to start doing these things, especially within a relationship. But to him, he's like, you didn't ask from me before.
Yeah.
So why is this a problem now? Because now you're changing what you want from me, where this wasn't an issue before. And this also manifests itself at when sometimes a girl can date a guy and, you know, maybe he didn't do that much for her in certain ways. And then he dates another girl and he does everything for her.
Yeah.
And she's like, so you can do it. Why the fuck did you not do it with me? And a lot of time, the biggest difference is that other girl provided the space for the masculine service that he wanted to bring to the relationship. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'll always give this example. Imagine if you're in a supermarket or whatever and you're trying to reach for Top Giants on the top shelf, right? Now, you could get it yourself. If you really stretch, you could get it yourself. And maybe there's one version where you go, yeah, I do. And you get it yourself. Cool, done. You showed you're capable.
Yeah.
Fantastic, right? But then there's another version where you're with a man and you can stretch to get it yourself, or you can go, babe, I know I can get this, but it'd be so much more fun if you got it for me.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And then you go, thanks, baby, I really appreciate that. Right? So you've invited that masculine service into your life and you've appreciated him for it. And that's just going to make him want to do it more for you.
Yeah.
And I think one thing as well, and this is what I want to ask you, like the sense of, because sometimes it can feel, I hear from women in terms of showing that you can be strong and independent, like you feel like you have something to prove. Like, where does that come from?
I think it comes from previous like experiences or previous relationships where you've been hurt. Like, I think if you have had great, healthy, nice relationships, you can show up in them, and being the feminine side or vulnerable side of yourself isn't a big scary thing. But I think when you've been in relationships which have been difficult, maybe somewhat abusive, it puts a guard up that you're like, no, like I don't want to instantly show that side. So I think that's why when you first go into dating, you put that wall up, and then when you start to feel comfortable with someone, you drop the walls, and that's when you step into your feminine energy. But at that point, you've kind of already portrayed more of a masculine energy for those months prior.
And then ultimately, I guess, if you attracted the guy with your masculine energy, when you step into your feminine, it's probably not going to be the right guy for you or the right energy that you're looking for. What do you think from your experience, what's the best way to navigate that as a woman, in terms of, I understand having the guard up to protect yourself from bad experiences, but then if having that guard actually attracts maybe not the guy that's fully in alignment with what you're looking for, what do you think the answer to that is?
Hope you really enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full episode where that clip is from, then I want you to click right here where you can watch the full episode. And if you're ready to claim your man today, enroll in my program below, and I'll see you there. Wishing you an amazing